let's start the recording.
Yeah, we're
going to welcome everybody.
Clayton,
my name is Leo Novsky. Oh, go ahead. You guys introduce me.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, Clayton. We saw that you had popped in a little bit early. Saw you on the side. Hope you're ready for this this interview with Leo Novsky. Leo Novsky is actually a powerful pitch presentation guru. He works with people to help them with their verbal communication skills.
Lori, you're breaking up.
To present on stages and to pitch in front of VCs. He is also a part of a tremendous.
You're breaking up, my friend.
Large.
Lori, you're breaking up.
All right, so that's okay. So
I'll pop in and take over for Lori. So
yeah, take over for Lori.
Leo does brilliant stuff with helping entrepreneurs craft their pitch so that they can communicate their message effectively. And he's got an amazing guest on here, and I'm going to turn it over to Leo and let him introduce his guest.
Thank you so much, Frank. And thank you so much, Zach, for being in the back end. We have an incredible team here at StartupCon Live. And as Clayton and I both know, at the end of the day, it's the team that makes the company, not the product. And so before I introduce Clayton, let me just say that building a company is not what I've learned in school. I don't know about you guys, but this is not what I learned. Calculus, English, physics, and basically nothing valuable, nothing practical. And what it takes to build a company, very often we have to learn ourselves. I had to learn myself, and many of this has to be done through failure, like walking. So one of the first giveaways, so to speak, that I am going to encourage you guys to do in this session is to take away the fact that you want to surround yourself with people who've been there, done that, so that you can learn from their mistakes. Also, before we go on, I want you guys to ask questions, actively ask questions. The way you do that is by putting in \Q space and then write your question. It will come up on the left side of the screen for us, for me on my end. And then we can actually, both Clayton and I can address that question. Also, I want you to encourage you to go and follow me at Leo Novsky Speaks, as well as Clayton at CDub, and learn what we are doing outside of this awesome blab. All right, with that, I want to introduce Clayton. Now, Clayton and I, we've virtually only met, even though he is in Seattle, a fellow Seattleite, and he is a serial entrepreneur with 5 companies under his belt and a lot of experience. Originally from the corporate world with aerospace. So if there are people who are stuck in corporate jobs right now but want to become entrepreneurs, clap for Clayton. Clap on his little, yeah, there you go. There we go. There we go. Yep, there we go. See? Because it takes a lot to get out of that rat race and to start something else. But just having a big idea, just having a great idea and dreaming it, and even building a team around it is not enough. The most important thing is traction and building a product. So Clayton, tell us just generally, give us a little bit of background of who you are and what is the valuable, who you are, how to follow you, and what valuable information through these years of entrepreneurship that you gather about building your big idea.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. Engineer by training. Spent a little time being an engineer, and then I joined corporate America with Honeywell Aerospace. Did that for about 12 years. Along the way, picked up Six Sigma training, and was involved even in Honeywell with some what you call entrepreneurial efforts, starting businesses, launching products. And then about 10 years ago, left the corporate world, started joining startups, and I've done 5 startups since then. And every time I'm involved in one of these things, I consider myself sort of a student of the process. So I saw what works, what doesn't work, and you usually learn more about what doesn't work than you do when it does work.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I teach occasionally an entrepreneurial class at University of Washington, and some of my clients, and what I tell them is, I'm not going to tell you how to succeed, but I'll show you how not to fail, because the success is elusive, but it's there when I avoid the major mistakes. So you said 5 businesses. What was the first one that you started? And let's just start with that transition from being an engineer in Honeywell to that an entrepreneurial role.
Yeah, so I was running a business at Honeywell, and I was recruited to join a startup called Naverus, and their big idea was Naverus. It's now a unit of GE, and their big idea was they were going to revolutionize commercial air transport navigation. Started by a couple of Alaska Airlines pilots, had a great idea about how you could use GPS to guide aircraft, which most people probably think that's already happening, but it's really not.
Not in this country. Not in this country.
No.
In China, yeah. Here, no.
Yeah, well, it's happening more and more, and they've had some success. But I think they fell into one of those traps where the idea seemed big enough and good enough, and it was going to improve safety and fuel efficiency and environmental impact, and everyone was going to love it. And they had that part right. Everybody did love it, but what they didn't have right was how to actually make it happen in the world. And what was underestimated at that time was that you've got a regulatory piece. You can't just go and change the way airplanes fly without dealing with the regulators. And so that part was really underdeveloped at that time. And it made it much slower to be successful than they originally thought. And so that's one of those hows that great product or great service is great. And even if you have a market that likes it, that's great. But you've got to figure out how it's actually going to happen in the world. And that's where many startups fail. So one of my roles as a communication coach, but also here as the facilitator, is to highlight important things. And your job as those who are watching is to tweet it out. You got it? We got a quid pro quo here. So what I heard is the operative word here that I heard, what you said, Clayton, is underestimate and overestimate. Yes.
Okay. So underestimate, overestimate, and using a theme of the day, because it's always good to find themes. How often does that happen in flight? Slight overestimation, underestimation, right? That happens a lot. But if you too much overestimate, underestimate, and don't correct, what happens?
Well, then you got a big problem, right? Exactly.
You have a crash. And so this is a really powerful piece here to understand when building it, is that underestimation and overestimation is part of the course.
Absolutely. Startups, you think about the word startup, you're doing something that hasn't been done before. And as a good friend of mine likes to say, everything's hard when you don't know how to do it. And almost by definition, even if you're a startup veteran, whatever particular business you're in, you don't actually know exactly how it's going to work when you start it. There's lots of things that you don't know, so you're going to make mistakes. And so it's key to go into it with that in mind and not assume that because your product's so great or because your market's so big, it's just going to happen easily. It almost never does.
Right. And that's the thing that I want you to talk about specifically, story-wise. That particular company that underestimated the process. Going back, if you give me specific names of who organized it and what was your personal experience, or when did you figure that out? Because it's one thing to talk about this in general. We need to get real specific. And how do the audience here finds those red flags so we can course correct before the thing crashes? So what happened?
Yeah. So what happened was, Naverus was started by 3 founders, a guy named Steve Fulton, who's a pilot from Alaska Airlines, Hal Anderson, and they got together with Dan Garrity, former CEO of Coinstar, to be the business guy. He also happened to be a pilot.
A great team, powerful
excellent team. Yeah,
okay.
they're all pilots. They were passionate about aviation, passionate about making technology work, and they were just loving it. You know, it seemed like a great thing. And they had what I call the curse of success. They had an early customer, $1 million customer, that was WestJet in Canada, that came in and loved the idea and wanted to make things work. And in Canada, it happened to be a cooperative environment with Transport Canada, which is the Canadian version of FAA. And they were able to do a whole bunch of work for WestJet in Canada. And it seemed like, hey, this is going to be easy. We'll do this, and then we'll just keep doing it. And that early success actually was a trap, because they didn't realize that what applied in Canada and to that customer didn't apply across the market, didn't apply across the world. And it was distracting to the hard work of figuring out how to persuade regulators to make this work. And there was really two problems. One was the regulatory environment. You can't change air transport navigation without regulatory approval. And the second thing is, you can't change the way you fly into one airport one at a time. And that was the original idea, was to fly in one at a time. And in order to fly into an airport one at a time, you've got to have a trained crew. You have an aircraft that has the right equipment on it. And you've got to have the air traffic control guys on the ground know that that's the route you're going to fly. And then everybody else around you also has to be ready for you to fly that route if it's different from what everybody else is flying. So there's a whole bunch of players. It's not just a simple
right. So taking it out. So what is it that they missed? Looking back, right? Mm-hmm. Being that Monday night quarterback, like, what is it that because I want to identify here these traps.
Sure.
So what was I love that, and I'm asking people to tweet this, the curse of early success. That is a real nugget here. Mm-hmm. But what was it that what should they have noticed? Or what did you notice? When did you notice the red flag?
So what I noticed, and this was after I was there for a while. When I was originally joined, I joined because they had an internal challenge where they had engineers working with airline pilots, which doesn't happen that often, but it turns out that's not exactly a great mix.
Really? What was wrong with that? Like,
we do, right? So it turns out that airline pilots, they go through checklists. Their whole life is controlled, right? You go into a cockpit, you got to go down a checklist and do everything exactly by the book. But by their training, when something goes wrong in an aircraft, it's not about the rule book. It's about get the plane on the ground. It's totally mission driven, and it's about that result, and it's about the result in real time. Engineers are the opposite. Engineers are doing work on a project that won't get built for months or years in the future. And so they are all about doing work in a methodical way, creating a paper trail so that 5 years later, when the bridge falls down, somebody goes back and looks at the file, they can look at the calculation and say, oh, the engineer didn't make a mistake. So there's nothing real time about engineering, and everything about being a pilot is real time. So there was a total mindset disconnect inside the team.
Wow. So guys, I hope I'm getting shivers down my spine. I hope you are too. Seriously, because the nuggets here are absolutely profound. You haven't written the book yet, right, Clayton?
That's correct.
We got to talk. But I know I'm not supposed to type things in the message box because I need to pay attention, but I have to. The takeaway here is that it's interesting. Pilots are mission driven versus engineers are process driven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's use this as an analogy. You can have in your company, you can have pilots and engineers. Yes, you must have. But that's the other thing. You must have pilots and engineers.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an if. This is a must. The question is, they didn't communicate well.
That's right. And they did not. So the pilots knew how to.
Engineer. You were the engineer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I was doing was helping the engineers get on the same page as the pilots, but sort of being the translator. I had to be the engineer's whisperer. And I could understand what the pilots were trying to do and help the engineers do it in the way that they wanted. Why did you
understand what pilots were trying to do? Are you a pilot yourself?
I am not a pilot, but I'm not actively practicing engineering, and so I'm not in those weeds. But I understand how engineers think. So I was able to understand the business requirements and help the engineers sort of get out of their emotional response to the pilots telling them what to do and how to do it, where neither group really respected totally the other group's expertise. So they were resenting each other a little bit.
So that's really interesting. And I didn't know we were going to get into this here. But again, it comes back to, it's like a vicious cycle, but it comes back to the team and communication.
That's right.
It really does, guys. There is a common thread, and this is the number one mistake that most entrepreneurs make, bar none other. And that is thinking that their product is more important than the team. Nothing is more important than the team. Nothing. Not even traction. As you could see, early success could be a trap in itself. So and having a translator, here's another nugget that maybe Zeph can tweet out, and that is that having a translator. So you must have a pilots and engineers, but there's got to be a translator. So
That's
you
right.
came in as the translator. And so what is it that you were able to overcome in order to help them overcome this issue?
So my main work was helping them produce the product, which was a route for an aircraft to fly, and producing it consistently and without errors, and so that the customer could accept it. So I was heads down on that first, assuming that the product was going to go to market and that the sales and marketing side of the company had things taken care of. So I was there for about a year before we realized that the sales weren't happening at the pace we expected. And that's when we had a big retreat, and we realized that selling these things one at a time to individual airports was not going to work. And in fact, it was an enterprise sale. We had the customer wrong. The customer was not the airport or the pilot. The customer was the entire organization of the airline. The entire airline had to buy into this as an airline and say, we were going to adopt this methodology, and we're going to lobby the FAA or whoever our authority is to let us do it. And it was a very long-term sales cycle and totally different than what they originally conceived how it was going to work.
So I'm going to stop you there and deconstruct this, because this is critical. That I've been in entrepreneurship for 8 years, and I have an MBA to kind of back up my limited academic knowledge. But what Clayton is saying is absolutely crucial here, and let me deconstruct it. So what he's saying is that they went on a retreat. They had early success, right? You guys had early success, and you came in, and they had two major groups of people: the pilots who were driving the plane, and engineers who were actually delivering the product. And they didn't talk; they spoke different languages. So they interpreted each other. Like, look, guys, I can tell you. Clayton, I could tell you "Yati Belu Blue," but if you don't speak Russian, you don't know I said I love you. And so you're just saying like, he doesn't love me. And so here we go again. So we got to have translators, or as Zaf paraphrased it, pilot who can translate the product. That's critical. So you came in for that. But even that was not enough. You guys had to go on a retreat. Where'd you guys go on a retreat to?
We actually went to the CEO's family house in Michigan.
Okay,
and spent a week there.
Yeah, spend a week at CEO's house. This is a storytelling tip. It's always critical to focus on specifics and create a visual that then I can use. I can see that right now. And what they found, guys, is what you will find if you look carefully enough at your company. Guaranteed at some point, because I can resonate. And that is, you've overcorrected or undercorrected, and you may not have the right audience in mind. You don't have the right who, either on the plane, right, on the team, or not the right who where you're going. And it changes profoundly the direction, right? So they had two problems. They had regulatory problem, and they had the problem of individual connection, like one versus many. And they could
go to market problem, right?
Go to market problem, right? Distribution problem, and they could solve both of them, but only when they changed the strategy. Only when they saw, right? Because now, if they are going not one-on-one, but going to an one airline, that airline also can adopt this, be the lobbyist for the FAA to help with the regulation. Am I getting this right?
That's right. So
what the takeaway here is that it's critical to constantly have these breakaway sessions and to change course if necessary. Be willing to change course.
Absolutely.
And yesterday, you may have missed it, but I encourage you to watch the recording. We talked to CTO of Blab, this very platform. And they did exactly the same thing. They were having a whole product. They had invested time, money, energy, everything into it, and it wasn't working. And so they got their creatives for 2 weeks, told them, go lock yourself in the house, come back with something, and we'll do something. And this was the birth 6 months ago, right? Or whatever. I don't remember when this went live, about 6 months ago, whenever that started. But the idea is that is critical. You guys out there, do you have a plan? Do you have the right team? Do you have translator on board? And then do you have times where you can go and question the very foundation of your business, the very foundation of your what? Because the why is the same, right? The why is to help change the way planes fly into the airports, saving time, money, and everything else using GPS.
That's right. That's right. And I just want to emphasize that what you're pointing out, which is the ability to learn. You know, I talk about the capability of the team, and it's not just about resumes. It's not just about chemistry even. It's about, does the team dynamically have the ability to learn as you go? Because again, you're doing a thing that hasn't been done. You're making a path through the woods, and you don't know exactly where it's going to come out or what obstacles you're going to run into. And so if you don't have the capability to learn within the team, in which, you know, involves communication and foresight and leadership and all those things, then that'll become your failure. It's not sufficient just to have a bunch of great resumes on the team. The team has to be capable dynamically to learn and adapt to new information and be willing to take in that new information. Right.
And so there's a great book that I can recommend to people here. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that, Clayton?
I've read it many times, and I usually
many times. And there are also 5 Dysfunctions of a CEO. Both of them are great little parables, and a perfect example, by the way, of how to deliver a message as well. But I'm going to take a little challenge some of the wording that you are using, because it's not just semantics, and that is, although we are in violent agreement here, and that is that everyone has ability to learn. Everyone. Willingness to learn because of arrogance or ego, and also the type of language that is used, the approach that is used. That is what the variable is, right?
Yes.
Each one of us on this Blab has had a favorite teacher, correct? Yes, the answer is yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But we also have a less favorite teacher. We also know of the worst teacher we've had. Right? And so your willingness to learn had less to do with you in many respects than the quality of the approach. So it's critical to create a culture of learning and culture of pivoting, because I can also learn, but the wrong things.
Absolutely.
I can learn the wrong things from the same situation.
Some of the biggest blockers to learning are those successes. Sometimes it's that big customer success. Sometimes it's how wonderful you think your product or service is. Sometimes it's how big you think your market is. And when you latch onto that, that's when the arrogance kicks in, and you say, well, I don't need to learn anymore. I've got it. And that's where a lot of startups fail. I know my product is great, so I don't need to learn anything more about how it's going to work, because I know how great it is. So
you were a question. So that's the other role that it sounds like you were playing. And tell me more, continue the story. But there is someone who has to play the devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's got to be somebody to say, what if we got it all wrong?
Yes.
Again, not every day. That's not the right thing. But on the retreats. So tell me what role did you personally play? Because you keep using kind of neutral terms.
Sure.
Tell me what you've done there.
Well, it's interesting. Unfortunately for me, that the story ended shortly thereafter, because we went on this retreat to kind of rethink things, and we came to this insight about the enterprise and about what was happening. But as many startups do, at that point we were running low on funding, and the firm had to cut way back and take out about a third of the staff, including most of the leadership team. And so at that point, I left the company and went to a different company. So that they continued And I don't know the details of that, so I can't really comment on that. I knew it was eventually acquired by GE, but it didn't, it was a successful idea, but it didn't fulfill the vision of the founders when they started it. And even, and now it's part of GE, but it's obviously, it's still a slow go for that idea in terms of implementing it in the world.
So what lesson did you learn from that? And then how did you implement it? Let's fast forward all the way to this company that you're currently part of, and talk about this and other lessons, and how is that applicable now? Sure.
So I think, what I learned, and it's an idea that I usually come back to, is, Michael Porter, famous business thinker, defined a business as the Venn diagram, where it's the intersection of customers' needs and capabilities. And so where I'm really focused is capabilities, and what does that mean? And so, you have to be capable of being willing to learn. You have to be capable in terms of skills. You have to be capable of executing on an opportunity. You have to be capable financially. And that firm, they lost the capability to continue the path financially with the same team. And obviously it's a setback when you lose a lot of the team. You've got to retrench, and you can't do as much as you could do before. So all those different forms of capability, I think, are often underestimated and underappreciated by people in startups, because it's easy to get focused on the wonderfulness of your product and the size of your market, and product market fit is crucial, as we know. And the recent thinking about lean startup and iterating to find product market fit, that is absolutely crucial. But if you have product market fit, that's still not enough, because you still have to have the capability of delivering that product to a market opportunity. The market isn't asking for your product or service. You have to figure out how to deliver it to that market.
So using your own example now of the current company and the current challenges, my goal is to really kind of boil down to some of the key habits. I think these are behaviors that of this that are necessary. But again, just before you even go on, just again to get that nugget, that it's not enough to have product client customer fit.
That's right.
It's critical to make sure that how I deliver it, that my delivery mechanism it works, and so how does one do that is really the big question on how to build your big idea. So tell us about what are some of the things that you are doing now to do that. Tell us about your current company and how you're doing this now.
Yeah, so my current company is a company called Yunu, IUNU, Yunu.com, and we are in the business of changing the way food is grown. Food growing was mentioned in the last segment, and our current product is a new form of horticultural light. It's using plasma technology, and so we're targeting anyone who's growing food that can grow other plants as well. And,
wow, what is the website again?
Yunu.com, IUNU.com.
IUNU.com. Okay.
And some states like Washington State, where I am, there's other non-food products that are legal to grow, and this light works well for those products as well. The key in an early stage startup, and we've got 6 employees, is roles and responsibilities. That's a part of a capability. Do you have the right people in the right roles? Do you have an organization where people can communicate effectively? Already mentioned capital. You've got to have enough capital to execute. You got to have the process. How do you actually deliver the product? How does the product get shipped to the customer without it getting damaged in the process? How do you get the product built? Do you have a supply chain? How do you develop the product or modify it? Do you have a product development function? Each of those is a sub capability of how do you get the thing done.
Right, but these are overwhelming. So, but more specifically, I'm trying to zero you in on your personal.
Okay.
So, what is your role? So, as a speech coach, one of the key things that I harp on is the use of I. The use of I as a pronoun rather than you or we, because the I really has the connection. Not I am, not showing off, not that, but through your own eyes. So what is your personal, Clayton, what is your role in this? And then what is your personal challenges? Again, and if you can't talk about this particular thing because of where the company is, use analogies or whatnot. But I'm just encouraging you to give me a focus of a specific problem and the process that you're using to solve that.
Absolutely. So I'll generalize a bit, just because different companies are at different stages, and we are very early stage. What I do is I make things work, and part of making things work is building an organization. So in one of my other startups is a now public company called Xeris Corp, XZERES, and I was the first employee there, and I built the organization. I had to hire a leadership team, create an organization. It was built on the assets of a bankrupt wind energy company. So we had a product and a couple of engineers, but didn't really have an organization or a business there. So I had to find an office space, find a manufacturing capability, find a team that could execute, and find a way to go to market and make the product work, make the thing work. And one of the things I learned in that is I coined a phrase that I still use, which is one of our goals is to be less stupid every day.
Say it again.
Be less stupid every day. Less stupid every day.
Be less stupid every day.
Exactly.
Okay, be less stupid every day. It's tongue in cheek, but tweet that, guys. Be less stupid every day. That is a great mission statement. Right? Every day, be less stupid or learn something new every day. Yeah.
Think of a startup like an infant. When an infant is born, it can't do much besides bodily functions and make noise. And gradually it gains some strength, and it can begin to wiggle around, and then it can sit up, and it can crawl, and then it can walk, and it can run, and it can do all kinds of things like a normal, fully developed human, right? So startup organization is the same. When it's in the beginning, it's a stupid entity. It doesn't know how to do what it's trying to do. And so it makes lots of mistakes, and it bumps into things, and it falls over. And so I like to use the crawl, walk, run analogy, where don't get upset or try to run when your organization is really at the crawl stage. If you're really just trying to do something really basic, like get a first product built and delivered to a customer, it's not the time to worry about scaled production and worry about how you're going to produce thousands of these a day. It's about doing just basic things right and being willing to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, because that's the stage you're at. So the organization has to get less stupid. The individuals in the organization have to get less stupid. And it's really about continuous improvement, so that incrementally over time, you're gaining lots of ground. But if you try to focus on getting ahead of yourself, then you're probably not going to do that very well, and you're going to forgo some other lessons you ought to be learning along the way.
Well, let me then kind of continue with this analogy of the walk, crawl, run. But there are about 10 people on the Blab right now live. There's got to be some questions that are going on. Let's put those in if you have them. But with walk, crawl, run, I have here in the background, you could see I have two kids. You see those? Mm-hmm. I got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old girl. And the girl is learning how to jump now, which is really fun to watch. But what I find so powerful about parenting is that what I say matters. How I use how I approach it, how I encourage or not encourage the company, or in this case, my child, to actually succeed. So what about the board of advisors? What about board of directors? What about the investors? How is it that you create, how do you go about building that part in order to encourage you from that? I'm assuming right now we're talking from crawl to walk stage.
Sure. I think that's crucial. Again, if you think about yourself, you're in a situation where you're going down a path you haven't been down before, and you don't know exactly which way to turn or how to think about things, or which of the many things that looks important to you is actually the one to focus on. That's where the right investors, the right advisors can be crucially important to you, because you're always in a startup in some kind of a near-death experience as a company. And
so as a startup, you're always in a near-death experience. That's another tweetable one. You're just full of it, man. You're full of tweetable wisdom, okay?
Yes.
As a startup, you're always at a near-death experience. Can I just focus you on, give me a specific example of what you have done as a CEO in the company to build that support?
Yes. So I would say selecting investors. If you have the luxury of having multiple investors who are interested in investing in your company, some people are great because they can write a big check or a small check, or any check will do sometimes. But it's really, really important to have an investor who is going to advance you to the next goal. So for instance, if you're a seed stage company, you're raising money to get something built. And so in one sense, you're saying, I just need some money because if I'm seed stage, I'm really near death, probably. I'm probably very thin on resources. But one of your goals as a seed stage company is to get an investment that helps you get to being an A stage company, because that's how you grow and you're successful. So you want to execute being a seed stage toward raising a great A round so that you're ready to go and be even more successful.
So what is it that you did in particular? Can you give me an example when you were able to do that?
I would say, right now I'm in a situation where we've got multiple investors who are talking to us, and some of those investors are good for a check, and some of those investors are good for guidance and help. And so that's making that choice is crucial. I'd say the same thing is true for advisors. I think some advisors really want to be actively helpful with the company and are looking out for your interests proactively. Other advisors are there if you ask them a question. Some advisors are just a name, and maybe they're a famous name, and it sounds good and they help you get other advisors, but they're not really available to you and probably not as useful to you.
So what's your strategy then to kind of have a little bit of all of them, or what is it that you do?
I think you have to decide what problem you're trying to solve. I think both the investor.
What problem are you trying to solve? So that's a beautiful concept, but I'm just trying to figure out. So for which problem, what would you suggest? For which problem, would you like to focus on?
So I think you're building a board of advisors. You're looking for different advisors to solve different problems. So if you have a technology product, you probably want someone who may understand that there's a big challenge that you don't even know about yet that's ahead of you, and you need to have the right signal processing engineer, for instance, on your team to solve that problem. If you have a market challenge, you need someone who knows that market. I'll go back to Navarus, and one of the early investors in Navarus was, ironically enough, really focused on getting the company to think about the FAA and the regulatory aspect of it ahead of the founders and the people in the company. And it's kind of funny, but at the time it seemed kind of annoying. It's like, what's this guy keep talking about the FAA for? And it turned out, like 2 years later, that was in fact what we needed to have been focused on.
Wow. So early.
That willingness to learn goes back to it again.
Again, guys, this is a very, very powerful concepts here that there are early warnings. There are always, in my experience, when I started Fitness Arch, a fitness equipment company for people with physical limitations, and I built a team and board of advisors, I did not listen enough. I did not listen. That was the death. That was the curse. I did not listen and experience. I said no but. Okay, no but. And in improv, I've learned recently that the best way to do improv is to say yes and. Okay, yes and. And so figuring that out is really critical. So I just want you to really figure out that there's wonderful things.
Because you both have poor internet signal and there's no camera. If you both can just refresh your browsers, hopefully your camera will be right back on.
Okay.
Just come back in.
Yeah, we were seeing. Yeah, people say just so I'm just fine. Okay, no lag. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Awesome. Yep. All right. So thank you guys. But so this is a really important part, is to find, again, coming back to find the right people and listen to them. And this is the major mistake in Build It that people do. They actually try to build what their idea is. Now, there's nothing wrong with minimum viable product. We got to create that.
Absolutely.
But after that, the next step is not to build the better product, is to build a team. It's always the who. So what I say, Clayton, and is I have a workshop called What's Your Big Idea? 10 Steps to Getting Your Product to Market. And every one of, every even idea is the same one. It's find the right people, right? So come up with a big idea is the first step. Second step is find the right people. Next is test your big idea. Next step is find the right people. And they might be different people from the first, right?
Yes.
And then
in fact, I would say that's a crucial point as well. And the reason the people aspect is so important is that it's a dynamic situation. And so a product is static. It is what it is at any given time. You've got to respond to the situation as it happens, and the circumstances change. And one thing I advise startups which are just forming, and I talk to a lot of these guys, is many times founding teams comprise some key people along with some other people who just happen to be present at the event, right? They happen to be in the room when the idea happened, and now they're a founder. Well, being a founder doesn't entitle you to be an executive in a company. It just means you're a stockholder. And so if you're part of the team that's needed, you've got a skill set or a capability, or you know people and you can help make things happen, that's one thing. But just being a founder and a shareholder isn't sufficient. And so I think a lot of startups start off with the idea that, okay, I've got 3 or 4 people. Let's just give each one of them a title and away we go. And you're not really thinking about the problem you're solving. You're going about it backwards.
Right, and that is really important piece, that going backwards. And I'm a member of Keiretsu Forum, which is the largest angel investment group, and so I get to see a lot of pitches, and I see this every time, almost every time. Let me show you how great our product is and the promises, and there's not enough attention on what really matters, which is iteration and team. Iteration and team. And so here are a couple of questions that they've been asked. I think they're really good. It's like, should you look for a more nurturing type of investor when you're in a, quote, crawl stage? Lori was asking that.
I would say absolutely. I think you really want, I think the benefit of a nurturing type investor, to use that phrase, is you always need guidance and advice, and there's always capability and wisdom that's beyond your local team. But if that advice is coming from someone who actually has put their own money into the company, then that person has a vested interest. And I think that can be just crucial if you've got the right investor really helping you along with a vested interest. And this goes to the other question about advisors who are just there to pick up a check or a piece of equity. There's a lot of people out there who are in the advisor business, and they're not really, don't really have a vested stake in the outcome. And again, the question changes day to day. What is the problem that needs to be solved today? What are you trying to accomplish as a company as you move forward? It's so dynamic that having someone who's really actively interested in what you're doing on an ongoing basis is really crucial.
So, and thank you so much, Clay. I think that's really coming back again and again to the same piece. With the way I would summarize what you say is, every day as I build my company, my first question should not be, what should my product be doing now? Or even what should I be doing now? But who should I be talking to now? And who should be on my team now? And who should be my investor? Who is my advisor? And am I creating those relationships? Who is my customer? It's ultimately from those people that you get the feedback that you will need for the product to succeed. It's almost like if I see entrepreneurs constantly focusing on, and myself included, on their product and the success of their product, and they fail in doing that, rather than realizing that the product and the company doesn't matter as long as if the people are not right. So Good to Great is another book, Jim Collins, right? And one of the big messages is get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. And that's one of the hardest things to do. But it's really, for me, if you talk to other people who have had scars from failed startups, they will say the same thing. And if you talk to people who have succeeded in their startups, they will tell you the same thing, is it's all about the people. It sounds trite, but that's not what startups focus on.
No, another phrase that is applicable there is hire slowly, fire quickly. You have to be willing.
Hire slowly, fire quickly. And guess what? Here's the other piece of this. And that is that because everyone is making this mistake, most people make this mistake. I will just say that when a company comes in and doesn't make that mistake in a presentation or in their execution, the perceived value of that company skyrockets in the eyes of investors. Like I remember pitching the Fitness Arch, and I always left pitching thinking, what a lousy bunch of sourpusses, right? They're just like they're just negative, and they try to find fault. And now that I've been through it, yeah. And Frank is like, that goes for advisors and consultants also. Exactly. I'm a consultant. You're a consultant. Not all consultants are made equal. So when you look for consultants, look for ones who understand that it's not about, I'll make your product great and I blah, 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 but who are asking, am I the right person for the job here? Are you the right person for the job here?
It's a fit question, right? It comes back.
It's a fit question, but it fit not with the product. Change. But it's not a product fit. It's a person fit, right?
The person has to fit the situation of the problem you're trying to solve. And the problem you're trying to solve now may be different than the problem you're trying to solve in 6 months. So you can't just get locked in. Again, the whole thing is dynamic. And one of the ways it's dynamic is there's you have to persevere through the difficult time, but you also sometimes have to let go of your idea. And so that judgment call of when to stay with a vision and when to pivot, that's really, to me, that's one of the critical measures of success is the companies that can pivot at the right moment in the right direction versus hold on to the bad idea too long will succeed. But sometimes there's only one person who believes that the idea is the right one and you stick with it and then it turns out to pay. So there's a lot of judgment call in that, right?
There's more than one way up the mountain. I think what's really important is the approach. Okay. So because I think that this idea and people willing to invest. I mean, I've been copying and pasting some of the things that Frank says because I think it's brilliant. Like you want people to believe in and actively support the vision for the company and are willing to roll up their sleeves and open up their Rolodex to introduce you to others who can also help build the company. That is critical, guys. That is critical because it's the Rolodex. And so often that's not what being asked. People ask for money. Exactly.
I think that's a fallacy is to think that you were talking to investors just to get their money. There's a lot of money out there and sometimes you can get it, but that's not sufficient. That's not really going to be the thing that puts you on top.
Yeah. And again, I remember my first investor that I got, it became the worst investor I've ever had. All right?
No, and that's a good way to destroy a company is get the wrong investor involved in your company and on your board. Again, it's about fit for your team, fit for your company, but fit for your timing.
And I want you guys to reflect that even though we're talking about build your big idea, and that was my intention to really focus on the nitty-gritty pieces, the conversation keeps coming back to this who, not what. Okay? So it's the why is most important, and then the who. And if you have the strong enough why and big enough what, if you have strong enough why, you'll attract the right who. And if you have the right who, the how and the what will take care of themselves. I mean, they're the ones that always get pivoted. Those change all the time, the how and the what. But the why should stay the same. And you got to be able to have the right who on the team.
What I would emphasize there, Leo, is the who is, it's more than just a skill set or a resume. It's also a mindset and ability, willingness to learn, willingness to work as part of a team, because you have to make those real-time life and death for the company decisions as you go. So you want the people who have the skills to build the product and go to market, but also the people who can be good team members and make the company successful and in that really dynamic environment that you're going to be operating in.
And I would just reiterate and say it's even more strongly, and that is the most important thing in building a team or finding the right customers or finding the right manufacturers or finding the right investors is that fit, not the resume, not the experience. Those things are important, but they are secondary. And that is not how the world operates, even outside of entrepreneurship, at Honeywell or at other places, right?
Absolutely.
So
that's right.
Look at, I have a tip when I talk about LinkedIn. When I talk about researching people in general, and this is an aside, but I think it's an important one. And that is this, that when I look at people, I scroll all the way down to their to their recommendations. Not endorsements, because that's garbage. Recommendations. And I look at not the recommendations that were given to them, but ideally the recommendations they give to others. And in that I find what matters to them. So finding what matters to people is critical. And so I want to finish up with this question. This may have been covered, but if startups are always experiencing near-death experience, when should they get life support? Right? I think that's a good one. So why don't you talk about your current company and what does life support means now? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, so life support, so we're a hardware company, a hardware and software company, but we're selling a hardware product right now. And so life support is both sales, selling the product. It's also investment. So that's when I joined the company 6 months ago, I said, okay, the two things we've got to do above all others is one is raise money and two is sell the product. And I'd say, when do you need, you're always in this near-death experience because your resources are thin. It's not that the red lights are going on, but you don't have enough money to stick with a mistake for very long. So you've got to be able to keep trying new things, and sometimes not trying new things. Sometimes avoiding the death is getting focused, and don't waste your resources trying to pursue too many things at once. So stay focused, figure out what's important to keep going, to be around the next day when the phone rings and it's a big customer wanting to buy your stuff.
Right. Well, I think that life support is different, David, for different people at different stages of life. But I will guarantee you the one thing, and that is whatever that life support is, it's not a machine, it's not a tool, it's ultimately it's not a company, and it's not cash. It's a person. There is always a person at the end of whatever it is that you're thinking about. That's the nature of humanity. So rather than focusing on the product, on the money, on the manufacturing process, which are all critical, focus on the right people behind it. And that can help you build your big idea. Again, thank you so much, Clayton. Great ideas. And I hope you and I will have more shows together where we can really dive into some of this stuff. But if everyone can clap for Clayton here, and obviously this is recorded, we can actually look at that. If you are interested, sign up. Connect with me on Twitter at Leonovsky Speaks and with Clayton at CDub and find out more. We're going to turn it over. It's 10 minutes till. We're going to turn it over to Zeph, who is going to kind of help transfer people, get people to the next room. And again, thank you so much, Clayton. That was really informative.
Thanks, Leo. Enjoyed it.
And let's see who. Yeah, there you go. Zeph is coming in.
Hey, everybody. So what I've done